Okay, hi everybody. Let's get started. Welcome everybody. It's 1 p.m. In Germany, at least it is. Welcome to the Green Buildings workshop that we have as part of the Connecting Nature Enterprise Summit here in Poznan. I'm very delighted to introduce a few panelists later that you've already heard just now. But before we do, there's two things about me, so you just know who you're being moderated by. My name's Jonathan. I'm an architect from Germany. I run a business called Helix. We do all sorts of stuff around green buildings, even our green train stations, facade greening. So we're very much focusing our work on how urban areas are made greener. What can we do to improve quality through plants, through nature? In cities, we are a nature-based enterprise, a term you've probably heard quite a bit this morning already. This is not obviously about what we do. It's just for you to get an introduction on sort of why do I get to speak to you today. There will be a quick housekeeping and info sort of segment here that I want to share with you guys. Feel free to use the question and answer button on this session, not the event, to your right. And I mean, you've probably already worked with it. It's not the first session today, so we're happy to take questions during or throughout this workshop. We'll see where we fit them in. There'll definitely be some space at the end where we can get into what you're interested in, to the panelists, to us, to the green buildings community. Also, as you already know, this session is going to be recorded, so it will be available afterwards at the Connecting Nature website. So check it out if you want to revisit, or if you have anything you want to share with friends or colleagues. And also, you've already seen the poll. I do want to point it out. Feel free to join the poll that there is on the events side, where we want to measure the support of market development for nature-based solutions. That'd be very interesting to get your info, your input from your country, from your professional life into this summit. So without further ado, again, welcome. I've kind of titled our workshop today on green buildings, on the public sector and nature-based enterprises. Why the public sector? I'll get into that in just a bit. I do kind of have the sort of question, is that a match made in heaven for greening up our cities? A goal that most of you guys that are interested in this session are very much behind. So, nature-based solutions is a term that's been thrown around quite a bit. I'm quite sure it's been heard today throughout the different various sessions and workshops. So obviously, the nature-based solutions defines kind of a solution that's inspired and supported by nature. By nature-based solutions, they must benefit biodiversity mainly and support the delivery of range of ecosystem services. A new term that Esme in the keynote address this morning has already brought up is a nature-based enterprise. So the idea of taking nature-based solutions, putting this onto an enterprise context, that's something that's very interesting that we're very much focusing on looking into today in this session. So it's defined as nature, may be used directly by growing, harnessing, harvesting, or restoring natural resources in a sustainable way by contributing to the planning, delivery, and stewardship of sustainable nature-based solutions. And therefore, a great place where we want to bring together all these nature-based enterprises is the Nature-Based Enterprise Platform. Most of you, and I hope all of our community members that are here today, have already checked it out, have already put up their profile of their enterprise. It's sort of become a space for enterprises working with nature in various communities, not just green buildings, not just what we're focusing on today, but very much involved with water and forestry and so on. So it's a place for those nature-based enterprises to come together, share ideas, share opportunities, share challenges. Jock and Hannah from Companyfi that we're going to just hear in a few seconds, they'll They'll talk about it. They're definitely on this platform. So get inspired if you have an nature-based enterprise that fits in one of those categories in those communities. Feel free to sign up. We now currently have 42 members in the green buildings community. It's constantly growing, which is great to share ideas. It's international, so everybody, let's get involved. All right. Why public sector? I thought it was very interesting to see, because in my daily work, we work with public and private sectors, but for some reason, whenever we work with the public sector, there's a few things that kind of bother me or that kind of distract me. So this should sort of be the general theme, because everybody wants a more green city. We have clients like this one where they have tiny spaces in the middle of cities and they just want to green it up, which is great. And it's become so mainstream for everybody to green up the city that I've recently stumbled across a Lego set, an existing Lego set. It's called the family house, the modern house. And, there's all sorts of electric cars going on and whatnot. But if you look and zoom into it, you can see on a Lego set, there's vertical green, which is amazing in my opinion. That it's become not just a trend, but something mainstream that should be the ideal house in the city, in an urban space. So private sector is so clear to me that it's, everybody wants it, it's easy, it's very emotional working with plans on facades, on buildings. And, per defining the term private sector, it's mostly involved of companies or enterprises or other businesses. But I do want to kind of involve private homeowners as well, because we're going to hear from the city of Frankfurt later, where they want to support private homeowners to green up their buildings, their existing buildings. The public sector, on the other hand, a whole different story in my opinion. So now we're looking at, an organization or a company that's provided funding by the government. So it doesn't matter if it's cities or municipalities or institutions working sort of from a governor's perspective. It can be public transport companies, it can be public education companies. It's very wide and broad, but for some reason, in my opinion, there's always sort of attributes that come with it. And before this session, I kind of went out to our community members on the Green Buildings platform, trying to hear from them what is going on with the public sector. What are their expertise or what are their experiences when working with the public? And these are just sort of quotes that I kind of picked up from here and there. And it's become clear that a lot of times it's been noticed or viewed as very complicated, because sometimes there are various documents that are needed to fit into the standards of a public sector institution. Definitely more time needed for decision making. I've had an experience, I've just had a rather small building or greened, but I've been talking and working with the municipality that we built for 3.5 years now. So it's a long time for us enterprises to be working on when it comes to the public sector, and our community members seem to share the same ideas. There's always, and I heard that from actually somebody working for the government, there's different branches that kind of block each other in some ways. So as soon as, there's different regulations and different branches of government react to those. And sometimes it doesn't seem like a municipality kind of works hand in hand to figure out a problem or building green, but it seems to kind of, contradict each other. There's a pricing thing. You put out tenders, sometimes it's, there's different price points on green facades, green buildings, but it seems like city halls decide very easily that they do want to take the cheapest, which not necessarily means it's the best solution for their problem. And public procurement processes, a term that's so difficult for me to pronounce, kind of says it all already. Very gruesome processes to go through. We do work with public procurement, but it's interesting to hear other people's opinions about this, even in this workshop just now. So this should be sort of the start of sort of quick introduction to today's format. I'm kind of wanting to not talk myself, but let other people explain their expertise, their experiences throughout this next now 50 minutes. We do have a great variety of speakers today from all over the place. We are going to start with the company of Companyfi. I hope the guys that I'll get on stage just about now have sound and video now. So hi Hannah, hi Jock. I hope you guys can hear me. Let's see. We're seeing a desk for some reason, but that's all right. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Good evening.
Good evening. I know, you guys, hi Anna, you guys are in Australia, which is great because, for us here in Europe, it's about lunchtime now, but you guys are already in the after work. So that's maybe the cameras also kind of don't want to work anymore. So yeah, just keep the cameras off. We hear you guys loud and clear. We have your lovely pictures right up the screen right now. And thanks for joining me. I'm very curious to hear about Australia, about Junglify, about your guys' work, and of how you've experienced the public sector with what you do. Sort of maybe to kick us off, and I have a few slides that you guys were preparing for us. Maybe tell us a bit about what Junglify is, what you guys do, what your work is focusing around before we get into the different details. And I'll sort of click through the slides. Hope that's okay with you guys.
Thanks, Jonathan, and good evening and good morning to everyone on this session. My wife and I, Hannah, we started Junglify back in 2009. We're 12 years old now, and we focus on creating critical connections between people, places, and plants. And by that, we mean we use science, engineering, and technology to harness the power of Mother Nature to bring plants to our cities. And as the sessions previously, the importance of nature-based solutions within our cities is becoming more and more critical. We in Australia have similar challenges to you guys. Jonathan, what you're explaining there with government organisations are exactly the same pains that we share here, high levels of frustration. But at the same time, there's some great examples of change happening in Australia.
Okay, brilliant. I was looking through your guys' website, on your portfolio, the slides you've prepared, and I've seen, and you said it just now, you seem to be focusing quite a bit on research, especially, and also on how, what an effort and importance your product made for their surroundings. So I'll just share one of your product. Maybe you'll explain a bit why you guys look so much into what the outcome of greening buildings are and can be, and how those breathing walls that you've set up, what they kind of bring to the surrounding of Australian cities.
For us, research has been such a critical part of what we do as a business. For us, the greenery on buildings can't just be about the aesthetic benefits. The potential wording, I guess, is greenwashing. For us, we needed to make sure that what we're installing we can stand by, and we have pride in the installations that we do. And by investing in science, we've worked with a local University of Technology, Sydney, for the last 7 years. We've invested significant amounts as a business, but also through government support, and really wanting to prove that plants do have the benefits that we claim. And for us, that's a really important part. So with the breathing wall system, we use fans to push the polluted air through the growing media. We know that within the soil where the microbes and bacteria live, they actually do the cleaning, so they eat the pollutants. And we've done research on volatile organic compounds. As you can see here, we have very high efficiency removal rates of things like ethanol. So all these hand cleansers that we're using in our day-to-day lives now with COVID, we really the plants eat that in significant volumes. Nitrogen dioxide, a key concern over in Europe, very effective at removing that. This is some trials we've done alongside the motorways in Sydney, supported by the New South Wales government and also another group, Transurban and UTS. So whilst I say the government sector has been, they're somewhat challenging, they've also been very supportive of us as a business with these innovations. And I think that's really where government is here to support. Organisation, industry have to lead and drive. The private sector supports us as a business, and then the government comes and supports both us and the commercial industries. Looking at the power of plants, I'm sure you've been through all of these with your other colleagues as well, but looking at plants for reducing the urban heat island, increasing biodiversity, improving air quality, the biophilic connections, noise pollution, stormwater runoff, and all of these key concerns and problems we have in our cities are research pieces that we have done or are currently doing with government organisations and also the private sector.
That's brilliant. Yeah, I was just wondering, as you said, these projects or these research that you do are always involving public sector, which I think is very interesting. When you look at who are your clients, so is it sort of 50-50, or can you say there's definitely a trend coming from the private sector? I know you've shared, and I will get through those, a few examples of the work that you do, and I'd love to share. So maybe kind of talk us through what kind of projects do you do with the private or public sector?
So this project you're seeing here with the Campbelltown City Council, it's outside a bus depot in the western suburbs of Sydney. The western suburbs of Sydney are a high growth area where they have very low tree cover, but they also are sitting at the base of the Blue Mountains. So they have huge problems with pollution. So we're trialing a breathing wall system adjacent to the bus depot, but also using this project to look at the effectiveness of plants and urban heat. And this image was taken in autumn, and even in the sort of cooler temperatures, there's still a 30-degree difference between the surrounding hard surface and the greenery. So again, proving the benefits of greenery in terms of impacting urban heat island.
And does the council sort of share the information that they want to educate their citizens of what green can do through an example like this?
They do, and it's a really important part. When we first opened this, a bus driver drove by and said, "Oh, what a waste of money! Why didn't we put this towards something else?" And then the council was able to explain why we're doing this and what it's about, and it changed the perception from the community about why we're doing these things. And I think unless you get the public support, it's very hard for the councils to then get on board with these types of projects. So I think seeing that, having the research to back up why they're doing things, having successful projects that look beautiful, are serving a function, then gets the public support, and the council can continue to do more of these types of projects.
Brilliant. Yeah, I totally agree. An example like these breathing walls for public, has in your history, has that sort of advertised for you as a company as well? So have people kind of seen installations that we've done for the public sector and said, all right, this is brilliant, I really want this at my house, at my company, at sort of on a private level? So does that kind of work as a showcase for you guys?
I think certainly the public ones are more iconic. I think what we find is that the private sector lead by taking bigger risks, and then the government sector sees that the private sector is doing it, and then they have the confidence that, okay, someone else has tested this, it's been tried and tested, now we can start to roll it out in public places. And then it flips around saying that we're seeing these bigger installations, and then more people are getting on board with it. This project here is one of my favourite projects. It's a project that we did with Transport for New South Wales, so the main transport agency within Sydney, and this was part of their B-Line bus service, which is a new bus service, and this is one of the commuter car parks, and we've covered it with our breathing wall technology. So we're actually using fans and plants to clean the polluted air from inside the car park before it gets exhausted out to the surrounding surfaces. One of the other key innovations with this is that all of the panels rotate inwards, so we can actually do the maintenance from inside the car park without actually having to have ropes access, which is being a government organisation, they're very risk averse. We came up with a clever way to get over some of those health and safety challenges.
That's very smart, because we have the same problems, that we always have to go from the outside to sort of do the maintenance on these green buildings and car parks and whatever. It's a brilliant approach to it. Do you think, in your opinion, does a city, or a transport company, like in this case, should set an example for greening cities, or where should the mass projects come from? From citizens, from those setting an example? How's it being done in Australia? Who are the sort of the trend leaders when it comes to building green?
Well, we had a fantastic relationship with Transport for New South Wales, and these were going to be their rollout there was 21 car parks they were building in the next 3 years, and then COVID came. So all of a sudden the revenue that they got from buses was slashed significantly. They had to double the number of buses to then have the safe distancing. So all of a sudden revenue dried up, and unfortunately they had to revert back to their old practices. So certainly COVID has had a big impact in the public sector, and I think it's also impacted in the private sector, but the government really needs to be mindful to not be seen, in some people's view, wasting money. I think, again, it's the public not fully, or some members of the public not connecting. I actually catch the bus home past this car park every other day, and it's fantastic to watch people that still point at it and talk about it, and to sit there on the bus is something I'm quite proud of, that we can have this impact on cities, because people really do connect with plants. And I think the government's realizing that with new policies coming out, but they're certainly not leaders. But I think once they get things going, they have the ability and the funds to continue it on and make it continue to happen.
Okay. Now you're based roughly around Sydney, in the south of Sydney, as I think I saw on Google Maps. So how does a city like Sydney, major worldwide city, how do they tackle problems of urban heat island effects in their city to make life, I guess, easier for citizens? And how do they use green, or what's your experience when working with them? Like on this project, for example, what does Sydney do for making a better place in urban areas?
Sydney, I think, like one of your previous slides, they're very driven by policies. We've got a 2030 vision for Sydney, and we've got now a 2050 vision for Sydney, and it's these policies that really set their guidelines. And the problem are that these policies are so far forward, and new technologies and new ideas come into play within these policy periods, and it's very difficult to get these new technologies and ideas up and into the policy. This project that we've done with the City of Sydney is a research project. So one of their current policies is about how do we encourage biodiversity back into our cities, and green roofs are relatively new in this space in Australia. So they funded a research project that we're doing here, and it's been amazingly successful. We didn't think that the native bees and insects would get up to 8 stories up to the top of the building. This slide you're seeing here is in terms of the effect of the green roof with pollution or heavy metal runoff. This project is very unique in that directly next to it, there's an exactly the same height building, exactly the same solar panels. But one has a green roof and one doesn't have a green roof. So it's a very rare occasion where you get such a real life example to be testing in testing this type of research. But you can see here the green roof has with the green bars, the amount of heavy metals and pollutants that we're stopping from the stormwater runoff from these particulate matter, other pollutants, is significant. And this type of research, this is a research project that we're doing with the City of Sydney to make the research publicly available so that others can be informed to make decisions about their types of projects, and for the City of Sydney to really support and encourage these types of practices.
That makes the perfect bracket, because as you said in the beginning, research for cities is very interesting to sort of back up what they're doing, where they're spending the money. That's obviously public money. And so what I take away from this is, getting cities not only involved to build green, but also get them involved or to do the research to back it. So to sort of have a whole understanding, and kind of appreciation of the green infrastructure that you guys put in. That's brilliant. I think there's one more slide about what you said when it comes to, the biodiversity.
So the conventional roof, there's only a handful of insects that were up there. We had camera traps up there. We've also had a PhD student analysing DNA from the water runoff, so they're able to tell what insect species are up there down to the very minute detail. And you can see the significant increase in varieties of avian, so birds, but also insects. One of my favourite images, and it's an image of a dead bird. And whilst that was, I was a bit sort of didn't quite understand it when it first came out, when we started talking further with the researchers, it shows that these green roofs are actually being used by all levels in the biodiversity food chain to actually encourage biodiversity back into our cities. So it's not just about the flowers or the insects or the bees, it's about the bigger predators that are using these spaces within our cities. And that's really quite an eye-opening, showing what impact nature-based solutions can have for our cities.
All right, we're sort of already running tight on our schedule here. I'd love to hear more about the situation in Australia. There's already been a few questions that are coming in. I do kind of want to bundle them and see how much time we have at the end, so I'll get you guys back on stage. But thanks. Sorry, Hannah, we couldn't really hear you just now. Maybe later we have the chance to have you answer a few questions. But thank you guys. Companyfi, great Australian company, doing great green work in Australia. And something you shared, which I thought was brilliant, of what the future is looking like, and it is indeed looking bright and green. Lots of green buildings are happening. I love to see what the architecture competitions come up worldwide, and it's incredible how much more green buildings are sort of popping up all over the place. So I'm excited to keep on looking at what you guys do. Thanks for coming up. So I'll push you off stage. Don't, no hard feelings there. I'll get you back on later. But I do want to go further and introduce my next panelist to you. Her name's Laura Maria Moore from the city of Frankfurt. All right, Laura, let's see if I get you up here. All right, brilliant. There she is. Can you hear me? Yeah, you're good.
Yes, I do. Can you hear me?
Brilliant. All good. Perfect. Thanks, Laura, for joining us today. How about you get us started on who you are, what you do for the city of Frankfurt, and what the project you're working on is with the name of, well, in Germany, Frankfurt frischt auf. We called it Frankfurt freshens up, I guess. So tell us a bit more of what you do for your work.
Sure. Thanks, Jonathan, for having me. Well, I think I'm part of the public sector, but I try to be not one of the problems you mentioned earlier, but more part of the solution. And I think I'm doing quite a good job, and Frankfurt is doing a good job with that as well. The Office of Environment, and I'm managing a project called Frankfurt Freshens Up, which would be loosely translated of our name. And we are a funding program, and we give money, all in all 10 million euros, to people and also for companies who want to invest in climate adaptation measures, such as green roofs, like we can see here, or also green facades, refurbishment of surfaces, and also rainwater storage if it helps to keep the green that is newly produced safe and fresh, and also shade and drinking water if it's publicly usable. So this is our goal at the moment. We started in 2018. The program is ending this year, but fingers crossed, it's looking good that it's going to be prolonged.
All right, brilliant. The program that you've just mentioned, so that means for clients, not companies like I am sort of representing today, but clients do want to build green. They could come to the city of Frankfurt, they can come to you and ask you for funding to support their intervention or their greenhouse or their green facade or their green roof, as you said. Is that right? So there's money being provided by the government, by you, so people can get started and get the cities more green.
Yes, there's this funding. We give 50% of the costs back if one realizes a nice project we approve of. And we also have an counseling in the beginning, like when people come and sometimes they don't have any idea at all. They just saw there was this green wall or this green roof that looks nice. I want to have that, but how does it work? So we give some first information about what to expect, what costs, how does it work, which variants are they, and such things.
Okay, and big question for me. I mean, obviously, I kind of know because we've had a talk before. But why does Frankfurt do it? Where does the motivation come from to spend money? Probably not little, so you know they can help greening up the city. Why? What's the interest?
I think it's not a surprise for anyone. It's the climate change. I mean, it's happening. We already feel it. It's getting warmer. The summers are drier and hotter. And especially in combination with the urban heat island effect, which also the city is not quite livable anymore, and it will be worse in the future. So we have to act now. Of course, we have to do climate protection measurements so that it's not getting worse. But at the ratio we are right now, we also have to somehow adapt. And the most heated areas are extremely dangerous as well. Not yet as dangerous, but they can become more dangerous, especially for older people or very vulnerable kinds, which we have to, as a city, we have to protect them. So we have to do something. Buildings in Frankfurt are owned privately. We try to give some incentive to
Okay, and is that working? Are those funds that you've prepared and provided, are they being picked up?
We didn't spend the 10 million yet, which is okay, I guess, because we had to get started in the beginning. We had to get the information out that we are here. But there's lots of people who are asking for advice, who are also want to be funded as well. We had something like 700 people who had some counseling from.
All right, yeah.
At the moment, we have 200 projects, I guess, which are, some of them are already done, some are just at the moment being built, and some will be in the future. And it's rapidly growing, especially that's during Corona, that kind of helped us because more people stayed at home and they looked at their surroundings and were like, yeah, that's ugly, I don't like it, I have to do something. And then they came to us. So this is like a little win out of.
All right, yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, that the pandemic kind of pushed the drive to build more green. You know what? I'll put you up. I'll stop sharing my screen so we have a bigger picture of the two of us. That's very interesting because I was going to ask how COVID kind of affected that. So it gave it a push. 200 projects. That seems, you know, a lot, which is great. So it's small to bigger projects, I guess. Small meaning maybe a garage where you put in a rooftop garden, and bigger project like a facade maybe, or what's happening in Frankfurt?
We have lots of garages. That's true, because it's quite easy to get a green roof on top of them. Mostly just not a garden, just like the normal car. Still, every ounce is counting, I guess. We also have some huge projects as well. And we also do have the politics, that it is important and that it works, and which is very good, which also makes that the project might be prolonged.
Mm-hmm. Okay, because that kind of segued perfectly into my next question. Does you representing the public sector, and that's great that we have you on today, sort of on the other side of the spectrum from the guys that we've just heard from Australia. Do you guys fund your own projects? Does the city of Frankfurt build green with funding that you provide in your own organization, in your own city, or does Frankfurt kind of look for citizens or companies to sort of put the word out and use the funds to get it started? Because you already said that most of the buildings are privately owned.
Yes. So the funding I can supply is only for private persons and for companies as well, not for the city itself. But the city itself is as well. They just decided that every new building which will be built in future has to have some green aspects on it. I'm not sure if it has to have everything, but at least some green roof, whatever makes sense in that area. So this is new and this is good. The existing buildings, there is some space to go, I guess. But as we, as you said before, we have to watch for the money. We are not allowed to waste tax money. Try to retrofit those buildings where some construction is in need, where it makes sense, so as not to be unsustainable.
Okay, and you know, in your opinion, because you've just mentioned that there's still so many buildings that could be retrofitted, that could be put up on a green roof or a green facade. What's your opinion? What does need to happen for those private-owned companies, private-owned buildings to get a push, sort of, you know, if where incentives don't necessarily are work or are not enough, what needs to happen that more green can come to the city? Do you have any ideas? Yeah,
I think the idea is out there. Many about it, and many people are interested in doing something, but then there's such bottleneck because many people don't know where to look for, and then especially what companies they are gonna ask. All the companies in our area, they are quite busy at the moment, and every time I tell my clients, like, yeah, you have to look for a company, and they say, I called, no one had time for my tiny project.
Really?
So we need more of those.
That's very interesting because, I mean, this is all about nature-based enterprises. So what you're saying is a major city like the city of Frankfurt would appreciate more companies, more startups, more nature-based enterprise to come forward and, you know, deliver their services to even get more started in a city like Frankfurt. That's very interesting. I totally get what you're saying. I see our schedules. There's a lot of interest into greening up cities all over the place. And yet the market is, in Germany for at least, it's rather small, I guess, of companies providing these kinds of services. What are your experiences to what I said earlier when I say it's a very time-consuming process from beginning to building green? You know, obviously you're one step in that process, very important because that's where funds can come from, which very much helps private-owned buildings to sort of decide, yeah, all right, let's do it. We get funding. It kind of makes more sense for us. What are your experiences with the time issue? Is there something that we could speed up processes, for example?
It does take some time sometimes. Sometimes it's due to the person. I mean, we gave some counsel in 2018, and now this year we had the clients say like, oh, now I'm ready. So they took some time to just process the information, get out there, get a etc. pp. And this is just a small project. The big ones, of course, like huge build projects, they take forever because it's so many things they have to consider, and the green, of course, is the thing that comes at the end. So here, I think it's very important to think of it from the beginning, because if you edit, there's no money left, there's no time left, nah, we don't care. So you have to think of that from the beginning, and then it takes time for us, of course, and also for you as a company that has to realize it. But it's better in the long run. Better thought through.
Yeah, I totally agree, because when we have the same experience, sometimes the building is almost finished and then they come up with the idea, all right, how about we put a green facade on it? And I say, guys, you could have saved money and time if you'd involved us in an earlier planning phase. And this is not supposed to be any sort of commercial, but I know the city of Frankfurt has the Museum of Architecture in Germany, which right now features a brilliant exhibition about greening up cities or green buildings. So if anybody is around Frankfurt, is in Germany, I guess we both can only recommend checking out the exhibition. Really makes sense. You guys were involved in putting up the exhibition as well, or how
yes,
did you? Okay.
We were involved. We gave some information to them, told them which people to ask because they didn't know them specifically for that topic. And we also gave some money to get the project started, to get the information out there, because planners and so important. If they don't think that green on the building is important, it's not going to happen, because they tell their clients if they should do it or not. And if the architect say, no, we don't like that, that's hurting our design or whatever, going to happen. So we need them, and therefore it's great that the German Architectural Museum is showing how to do it. They also have a lovely book in case anyone... yes. Now
it really is a commercial. I'm really sorry, but I'm just because it has a lot of pictures, and I'm an architect. I don't read much, so I very enjoy that it's made for architects, very visual.
It's in German and in English as well, so it's for everyone. And there's some nice information online as well if you can't visit. So go check it out maybe.
My colleague Sven, he just posted info about the exhibition. So guys, check out the chat if you're interested in more. All right, brilliant, Lara. I think, again, time is very busy today, and we have a lot to go through. Thanks for sharing your thoughts on what the city of Frankfurt and what your work is all about. There are questions. Again, we're going to come back to them later, everybody. And I'll jump in forward a bit. There we go. All right. Jock still doesn't have a camera. This is all live. I really like this. That's kind of when it's the most fun to be working around. If technical issues come about, if it's too hard for microphones and internet connections, and that's where things get very interesting. I already feel like sort of a news anchor trying to manage through some sort of delay or a soccer game that had some interruption or anything, but we're good. All right, guys, thanks for having me.
I was going to say you're doing very well at managing the situation. So.
Yeah, I'm very much sweating right now because there's so many different moving parts here. But thanks, Jock. I really appreciate it. How's Hannah, by the way? Has she returned to the stage, or how have you?
I think she's having technical issues as well. So unfortunately, it's one of those AV days. So.
Yeah, well, here she is. Let's see if that works. It seems so weird because last Friday when we tried it out, it seemed it worked just perfectly. All right. Anyways, guys. Thanks for coming up. We'll wait for Susanne, but I do have more questions for you guys. And how about we share sort of the question and answer part with what has already come. So maybe I'll start with a question for Companyfi, guys. I'll unshare my screen here so we see each other a bit better. Okay. So Pierre is asking to Companyfi, have you explored bio-based solutions for the materials used for the fan systems and the plant containers, as opposed to plastic, so sort of fossil fuel-based materials?
We are constantly looking for new materials to use. Obviously, the better our approach to circular economy and reusing of materials. Currently, we take back all of our, if the green wall gets taken down, we take it back and repurpose it. So that's a really important part for us. So always looking for better plastics. So if you have any advice on where we might start looking, we've looked at even things like mycelium, but then obviously the decomposition that happens within the soil proves problematic. So yes, we are always looking. So please share any information you may have.
Yeah, I agree. We use, obviously, I mean, I didn't get into our products. We do have plastic as well. It's always going to be an issue. It's always going to be a good point to be sort of trying to get better. But in my opinion, sometimes you need sort of a medium where green can come out of. And sometimes that includes fossil fuel-based materials, in my opinion. But I totally agree with what you said. Hey, there's Susanne. Welcome to the stage. Now you only have to turn on your microphone, Susanne. You just join in our conversation. That's just fun. We'll just keep it in this kind of format, which is nice. So yeah, Jock, I completely agree. There's, you know, what are your experience, Jock, when it comes to sort of your connection to the cities? I feel like what Lara just said, you know, there's not enough nature-based enterprises to do all the work that's come up for the fundings for those who are interested. And I kind of feel like I have to keep, you know, a friendship almost, or a professional friendship with the cities to sort of keep me in the conversation for when a city comes up with the idea to greening a building. How's your experience in Australia? Do you guys keep up with cities? Do you have some sort of networks that you guys work with the cities? Do they appreciate much what you come up with?
Yeah, we've got very strong relationships with each of the Sydney cities, and it's taken a little while to build those relationships. We worked with the City of Melbourne to create what's called the Green Factor tool, which is based off the Finnish tool that actually values greenery, and there's almost a point of mandation of greenery onto buildings in Melbourne, and that's something that we worked with the council on and other organisations. So certainly that relationship is very important. Also for other government organisations, one of the biggest challenges we find for the uptake of nature-based solutions is the ongoing operational costs of it. That's one of the biggest challenges and barriers, and we're trying to change the narrative to say, well, rather than look at it as an operational cost, let's look at it for an opportunity to train and educate. And I think this supports Lara's issue within the City of Frankfurt, is that they can't find enough people doing it because there's not enough opportunities to train and grow. So I think we need to get that discussion happening and really look at it as not another cost, but another critical element of infrastructure that we have to have in our cities.
Mm-hmm. And taking that to Lara, do you think in the future, and you've already mentioned your program at some point will come to an end, but you're already looking at the consecutive one. You probably only fund initial build-up of green. How is what Jock just said, how's maintenance sort of fitting into maybe funding program? Has that come up with you guys?
The question comes up pretty often, but it's quite hard to fund that as of now, because we always say, well, if you do have something on your building, you have to maintain it. You have to maintain your building, and you have to maintain your garden, and you also have to maintain your green facade, for example. So it's really hard to say, okay, your building, you stick with it, but you got a funding, and now we help you maintain your building, which to some people. Therefore, we haven't found a way yet to facilitate that.
Okay, because I go hand in hand with what it seems like for us when we set out for a building or a pricing for a green wall, it's not only the initial cost that kind of hurdles us or is in the way. It's usually maintaining costs over the years, and I think it'd be great to find an instrument there on maybe where different kind of funding mechanisms match to support these maintenance of green facades. Maybe Susanne, what are your experiences if you can hear us? How about Austria? What's the situation in Vienna when it comes to funding of maintaining green infrastructure? All right, that really doesn't look good today. I'm really sorry, Susanne, that it's not working. Oh, there she is. Maybe. Oh, and she's gone. Okay, this is very unstable today in Vienna. It must have been just too hot there. Yeah. All right, we'll give up for that part. I'm sorry, Susanne. There will be consecutive or next workshops around. We'll have to feature Grünstadtbau again there. I guess if you guys want to check out their website to learn more about Grünstadtbau, feel free to. You'll find all the info in Susanne's profile, I guess. Lara, maybe again to you. What are the trends that are coming? I mean, you've mentioned that usually it's only smaller garage decks where people put up a little green roof. My opinion is that in the last 3 years, or maybe since 2018, when your project started with the 10 million euros, for me as a business person, it seems like the projects get bigger and bigger. The companies, as we say, are staying sort of the same, maybe a few startups coming up, but it seems like the whole building industry is kind of catching up on the trend, trying to include greening from start one. And as you said, cities kind of make it mandatory for buildings, if they want to be built, have to be involving green. So is there a trend that you see in what kind of projects you fund? Are they getting bigger over time?
Yes, in the beginning we just had private projects, small ones, and now we have several projects which are quite huge, which include office buildings mostly, which also include, there's a nice yard inside which is green, then they have rooftop gardens a lot. So it comes to the mind of the companies that this is, I guess, good for the building and also good for selling a building.
Okay.
So we do see that, and especially as you mentioned before, some things are mandatory. We don't fund mandatory things.
Okay.
We just fund if it's well, if you do it.
So the extra push or the extra involvement. Okay.
Yes.
Jock, in Australia have a sort of an association for greening companies. Is there sort of work that's been done on a bigger governmental scale where you guys are being represented by some sort of associations?
There has been in the past. The organisation has grown and contracted in size. At the moment, it's quite small. There's not a lot of governance within our particular sector, but we're fitting more under the Institute of Landscape Architects or Institute of Architects, and now bringing us under their banner, sort of working with their team and their association. But certainly it's something that we should have in Australia, because it can help build and encourage new businesses to enter.
Because when I talked to Lara, and you said the same thing, Lara, so kind of work for you guys as recommendations to find those companies out there. Obviously, you're not allowed to present individual companies and say go to them, because we all know that wouldn't work. What are your thoughts on the German association, for example, the BUGG, which kind of combines all the companies involved with greening? What are your thoughts on associations?
I think associations are really important. We aren't allowed to name several companies because this would be unfair, and the other company which wasn't named would sue us, of course. So the associations are a great way to get the information about which company is available and which is doing what out there for people. So we are also part of that association since 2 years, I think, and they are growing rapidly at the moment. And I hope they will so in the future, and more companies are joining them, so that the people that ask us, we can direct to them, so they find the company that's going to realize their dream wall.
The dream wall. I really like the sound of that. Yeah. Maybe a final question that came out of the chat from Daniela, which I'm very much interested to as well, Chuck or Hannah, if she can. I don't know. Design competitions. My experience is that architects, obviously, it's a new topic. They don't necessarily know much about how to green buildings, so they get us involved into design process as well, which for us, on a business perspective, doesn't really make sense because you don't gain any euro out of it. But obviously, we do want to have the contacts to the architects, or in better terms, those who are building. How does Companyfi go about when it comes to architectural design competitions?
We have a group that we traditionally work with, particularly landscape architects who we've had long-standing relationships. We get brought into with them on the project. Unfortunately, we still get brought in after they've won the project. We haven't been there from the very outset, but we're starting to see a change in this regard, because if the architects are going to be showing greenery, they need to be able to make sure it's going to meet the client's budget, and they're actually going to understand that this can actually be done. We're getting a bit of people are getting frustrated, especially architects. They're designing something and then it gets to the builder, and the builder says, well, or the developer says, I can't afford this, and then their design, and Jonathan, you know, as an architect, it gets destroyed, and then they build something that has their name to it, but it's nothing like they envisioned. So we get on board early with the architects now at the design stage. That photo you showed at the end is a project that's currently in the design stages. It has been approved by the council, and it is going to be built. So this is a project that we're seeing all the way from involved from the very start, and hopefully we'll go on to install and maintain it. And that is going to lead to a much more successful outcome, rather than design something and then think about how you're going to maintain it at the end. Yeah,
I totally agree. Yeah, sometimes it's frustrating that you put so much effort into it, and that kind of goes hand in hand with Daniela's second question, because you put all your efforts into helping the design, helping delivering information, but in the end it kind of falls into a public procurement process, and you don't necessarily get the bid and kind of sort of scram all your ideas about it. So that can be frustrating, but I think public procurement might even be another session for this summit. I do kind of want to wrap up and say thank you guys for joining me today, more or less with technical issues, but I'm sure we'll figure it out by the next time. So thanks for all your input. I'll share my screen real quick for a bit of more information. You guys just feel free to hang in there. All right, if any of the attendees today are a nature-based enterprise, it'd be great to be featured on the platform. Doesn't even necessarily have to be about green buildings, although we're very much welcoming you, but check out all the communities, maybe you fit to one of them. I did already mention the poll about market development for nature-based solutions, so feel free to head over to the event space where you can join the poll. And now there will be networking sessions and expo booths. There is a Helix booth I might and will jump into just now, so if you guys have any more questions about the work that we do, send me an email, see us on Instagram or whatever. And I hope you very much enjoy the rest of the Connecting Nature Enterprise Summit. Thanks, guys. See you very much soon. Bye-bye to everybody.
Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks, Laura. Thanks, everyone. Goodbye. Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.